Hello everybody! So to continue my previous blog Slugify video, today I'll be introducing RSS and Atom feeds into my blog sample website. This is Stef from Samayas and welcome to my channel. So what is an RSS feed? RSS stands for Really Simple Syndication, and it's a type of web feed that allows users, but mostly applications, to receive updates from a website, but in general more for a blog or a news feed or a podcast. An RSS feed is an XML format, so when we publish a new blog article, this RSS feed needs to be automatically updated. Pure technically, we could create an XML document and update that manually every time, but then we wouldn't be developers, of course, and it's also quite error-prone. So how does the XML structure look like? It's a simple XML structure with an RSS root element and a version. In there we have a channel. Then we have a number of fields like title, link to the blog, description, support language, and the latest update version of this XML file. Next, we have a list of multiple items, which are your blog items, or news items, or podcasts. Each of those items has a title, a link to the individual item, a description, a publish date, and a unique ID. Of course, as an excellent developer, we could just code the XML files ourselves, using spec for the RSS 2.0. Or being lazy, we could just use a library available. So first, I'll continue on our blog Slugify sample, and there I'll add the Microsoft.ServiceModel.Syndication library, which provides the basic functionality. Even though this library initially was created in the old days with WFC in mind, there's a new clean version that evolved along with the .NET Core framework. There's also Microsoft.Syndication feed.readwriter, but that seems to be rather abandoned. Both RSS and Atom feeds are more or less the same, with the Atom being more of a standard, but being less supported and having some more properties. The syndication support library supports both. Next, I'll look at the Argotic component. Let's dig in. So as you can see, I continued on my previous blog Slugify website, where I had 5 blog posts, which were all hard-coded. And next to the blog posts now I added 2 extra URLs, the RSS URL and the Atom URL. So in this first sample, in order to generate my RSS and Atom feeds, I'm using ServiceModel.Syndication, and so using Nugget, I've added that to the project. A little recap, I have my blog processor. This project has no repo and everything is hard-coded. And so in my blog processor, I just return a fixed list of 5 blog articles. Then if we go to the program, since I'm using my map controller routing and not attribute-based routing, as you guys remember, first I have a catch-all blog/article, which takes all URLs for article, and then I had to pre-overwrite each individual sub-URL where I want to specify a different action and controller. So I've added here a blog site RSS and a blog site Atom, which go to the blog RSS action and the blog Atom action. Now let's look in the blog controller. The index is the same, we still retrieve all our blog articles. We still have the site index for our indexing, and I've added 2 actions. I added the RSS action and the Atom action. And when using the Microsoft.Syndication library, there's no difference when we generate either an RSS or an Atom XML. And so I've created one function, create syndication feed, which does the job for both. So my syndication feed first allows me to enter the title, a description, the URL where it's based, an ID and a time set. And then we have a number of extra properties which we can add, like author, contribution, copyright, the language. We can also specify a number of extra links, and there's a notion between the link itself and the alternative. So if we're on the RSS sample, our first link of course is the RSS. If we are on the Atom, the first link of course is the Atom and the alternate is the RSS. And the third link for both is the link to the blog. If we have a more complex blog, news site, etc., we can also define a number of attributes. And we also have the possibility, for instance, to say, like our blog, we only publish on Friday. So we decide to give information to skip all other days. And we might publish between 9 and 1800. So we also communicate that to skip all those hours. Now this is just informative, and the other side has no necessary reason to commit on that. They might query your Atom or RSS feed every hour of every day, but they might also take into consideration. And then the second part, of course, we reloop to our blog processor and retrieve all of our blog items. Here we sort by date in descending order because we want the latest article, the most recent article, to be shown first. And we loop through everything. And for each of our blog posts, we create a syndication item and then we return our feed. Now the Atom format is a little bit more descriptive and also has more properties. So for instance, the contributors and the copyright is not shown in the RSS, but is shown in the Atom. So let's see how that looks like. As you can see, I switched to a different browser because apparently whenever I click on Firefox on either of those links, it just downloads the file and it doesn't visualize. Most other browsers, which I tried, do visualize. And since for demo purposes I want to visualize, I switch to Opera. So when I click on the RSS link, it shows me the XML it generated. So as you can see, we have the blob title, we have the link to our blob, we have a description, we have a language, we have a copyright, we have an editor, we have when it's last modified, we have multiple categories we defined, we have an image we want to display for this RSS feed, we have the number of hours skipped, we have the number of days skipped, and then for each of the blog articles we have an item with an ID, a link to the blog article, the author, a category if we need to, a title, a description, and a publish date. And that for each of our 5 blog articles. So if you go back to the Atom format, it's a little bit different. As you can see, next to the author, we also have the contributor. Now, instead of having an RSS, we have a notion of feed. Properties are slightly different. We don't have an item anymore, but we have an entry. We have more information. We have and the author and the contributor, but they're more or less the same. So with a minimum amount of effort, I could easily create my RSS and Atom feed. And then once I have created my syndication, there's only one difference. For using that syndication component, we just need to specify the formatter. So we either have an RSS 2.0 formatter or we have an Atom 1.0 formatter. And I have created a small little write to XML function. It takes in the formatter, creates a memory stream, creates an XML stream, and so there's not much more to it. And so of course we need to specify the right format we return. Return application RSS plus XML or return application Atom plus XML. And that's about it for the main Microsoft syndication. Now I made a second implementation using the Argotic component instead of the Microsoft one. The website looks exactly the same. We have the same 2 methods. So let's dig in. So let's look into the code. Here I included 2 different components. I have the Argotic Common and the Argotic Core. However, Argotic has some more components available. We also have an extensions and we have a web version, but I didn't use those. If we go to the programs, again we have our same map route controllers. We have the block side RSS and we have the block side Atom, which both go to the controller block with action RSS and action Atom. Now let's look at the block controller. Here we notice a slight difference. Contrary to the Microsoft component, the Argotic implementation made 2 clear, distinct, different objects. We have an RSS feed or we have an Atom feed. And reusing here wasn't really possible. So let's first look at the RSS feed. It's more or less the same, yet a little bit different. We define our title, description, the link, the language, the date, the image, the categories, the skip days, the skip hours. And then we loop through again our blog processor for retrieving all the blog articles. And then we create an RSS item which we specify the description, the link, the GUID, the publication date, the author and the category. And then we have more or less the same with the Atom feed, except that it's an Atom feed. And so for Atom feed, it's the same thing, except we have an Atom feed instead of an RSS feed. We define the title, the ID, the generator, the language, the logos, the attribute author, the links, the categories, and then we loop through again each of those items. I try to dig into the Atom feed and to RSS feed to see if I would have a common object. And even though they are using common underground, both the RSS feed inherits from the iSyndication resource and the Atom feed does as well. However, the iSyndication resource only includes some loads and some saves. Same thing for the Atom feed. It inherits from the iSyndication resource, which has the same load and save. And so you might reuse it if you would be loading or saving it, but it's not usable to fill in the properties. So personally, I prefer the other one, since I only need to define my object once. They look more or less the same in functionality, so again it's a matter of choice. If you look at the result, it's as good as the same. Since they stick to the format, you don't notice the difference. And so that's it for this sample. So as you can see, with very little effort, I can transform my blog, news site or podcast and easily introduce RSS and Atom feeds. Now this is just a basic POC implementation, concentrating on RSS and Atom samples. In a real-life site, which is or might be very successful, you might need to think about caching the database results for like 1 hour or 1 day, depending on update frequency of your blog or news website. You might also cache the output as a whole, since this isn't really user-specific. But then again, with each cache, at some point, it becomes obsolete. So you need to also think about a strategy to handle that. Or, if the caching period isn't long enough, just wait until it expires. You can find the source code on GitHub in the link below. If you guys like this content, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell sign. Or leave a comment down below.